All right, guys, I hope you're as excited as I am about our guest tonight. Everything's connecting. It's going to be just another second or two. We're almost ready. We're going to learn about the Enneagram today. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun. And here we are. Welcome. My name is Diane Haworth, and welcome to How to Choose Love right here on the Awake TV network. I am beyond excited today to welcome Dr. Deborah Egerton. Deborah, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Diane. I'm excited as well.
Well, let me tell you why we're excited, people, because we're both Enneagram lovers. Now, some people have heard about the Enneagram. Not everybody understands its applications. It has made such a difference in my life. It has helped me choose love, not only for myself, but for my business, for my family, for my clients, literally for the world. It's helped me have so much more compassion and understanding. And in my life, it's been absolutely one of the most important spiritual tools I've ever found. So, and guess what? Deborah's an expert. So let me tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to get right to it. So Deborah Egerton is founder and president of Trinity Transition Consultants, is an internationally respected psychotherapist and executive coach who is often described as an unforgettable thought leader. You'll see why in a second. Her work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space is legendary. Dr. E, as she is affectionately known, is an inspirational Enneagram Jedi, which I love that. Jedi stands for Justice, Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion, who teaches the Enneagram for introspective self-discovery. Additionally, she's been a trailblazer in developing ways to integrate the Enneagram into her work as a social justice warrior. She facilitates career growth and personal development with individuals and organizations by focusing her efforts on respecting the uniqueness of every individual and honoring their humanity. Okay, there we go. So that was a mouthful. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I was really excited about was that I know quite a few people that teach the Enneagram. But when I went inside and said, who is the best person to be on this show? It was Deborah. So welcome again. Thank you so much for being here. And for maybe our friends who don't know what the Enneagram is, or they might be a little confused, can you just give us an idea of what it is and how you use it in your work?
Love to. So, Diane, the Enneagram is a personality archetype. It is a typology that gives you 9 different lenses on the world. There are 9 different ways to really approach and look at things. And what is fascinating about the Enneagram is that there are so many different personality tests that are out there. And as a psychologist and a psychotherapist, I've used them all. But what I can tell you is that the Enneagram is not all about your behaviors. It's about your core motivation. And so it's not always what you do, but it's why you do it. And when you discover why you do what you do, you have some options. You can actually look at how you show up. I mean, it's literally like picking up a mirror and you're looking at yourself and you're saying, you know, that's way too much mascara. That's not really working. I'm really overdoing this. And the Enneagram works that way. It just helps you to see yourself in some ways the way that other people see you. And when you recognize that what you're putting out in the world is not aligned with what you thought you were putting out in the world, it makes a huge difference. So the Enneagram is about looking at yourself, embracing your strengths. It's embracing your shadow side as well, because you learn about the high side of your type and the lower side of your type. And it's about exploring options to look at ways that you can actually be the best version of who you were created to be.
I love what you're saying. And for those of you who've not experienced I call it the magic of the Enneagram, it is it's like you said, it is so eye-opening. It is just so eye-opening. And for me, the first class that I took, I just had so much compassion for every silly, stupid thing I ever did in my life.
Right.
It was like, that's why I did that. And
Exactly.
that awareness helped me choose differently. Now, can you speak a moment too about how it's used as a spiritual development tool? Because that's how I use it with my clients, and I know you do as well.
Well, for spiritual development, the Enneagram helps you to go deep inside yourself. It allows you to really touch not only your basic desire and your core motivation, but it allows you to touch that core wound. And we all have one. And when we can, one of my quotes is that the quality of your life is directly comparable to the depth you're willing to reach in your soul.
Oh,
And Enneagram helps you to do that.
it's
So
a map.
it's all about that. And if you're willing to take that deep dive, and I have to tell you, even if you just stick your toe in the water, you kind of get curious about what you're feeling under your feet, and you begin to wade a little deeper and deeper and deeper in. And I have to say that from a spiritual standpoint, the Enneagram helps you to see what stands between you and spirit, what stands between you and God, you and your creator. Because the compassion and the empathy that you begin to develop for yourself and for others comes from a spiritual place. So something that I always say is that forgiveness is human, and what we look for in terms of forgiveness is atonement. So the atonement is the human part of forgiveness, but forgiveness is divine. With the Enneagram, you stop waiting for an atonement, and you are given the grace to forgive and to move on that comes from spirit, that comes from the divine. And when you are doing your work, and you have to do your work with the Enneagram, you begin to just see the layers unfolding, and you go deeper and deeper and deeper into love. There's a purity to the journey that the answer to every single challenge that you face is always love. And even when some of the things that you might have to do or go through, and I have to share this, Russ Hudson always talks about how no matter how hard you try to sort of elevate your consciousness, as soon as you move up, you get your butt kicked again. And it's so true. But it's because by doing the work, we begin to elevate our own consciousness. We begin to develop a true relationship with God, with spirit, and we are really moving through and navigating the earth and our humanness in a different way.
That's exactly the way I found it. And I bet we need to probably tell people who Russ is.
Well, gosh, that's true, because
because we know him, but maybe they don't.
So Russ Hudson is, I call him one of the fathers, one of the founding fathers of the Enneagram. And Russ is just also an Enneagram Jedi. He's, dived right in with me in this work in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion. Russ is the author, along with Don Riso, who passed a few years ago, of The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And the wisdom of the Enneagram is still, for many of us, like the Enneagram Bible. We
Exactly
go
what I was gonna say.
back and we read wisdom over and over again. And every time you pick it up and read it, you get some new nuggets, of wisdom and beauty that just sort of, you've read that before, but you take it in a different way. And I say that that's very true. I am Christian, so I do read the Bible. And when I read the Bible, I'm always taking something new away from it. And when I work with the Enneagram and I have a little bit of a challenge with something, I'll go pick up wisdom. And wisdom always gives me something that I was looking for that I had not seen before. So Russ is a world-renowned Enneagram teacher. He happens to be one of my dearest friends and continues to be a mentor to this day.
Wonderful. One of the things that we were talking about before we came on air was how versatile the Enneagram is and who it attracts. I was sharing with you that a local Episcopal church here in my hometown is starting an Enneagram class. Russ, I know, works in the prisons. I know you work with families and with couples. Tell us a little bit about how you use the Enneagram to help your clients find love again. How do they choose love using the Enneagram? Girl, I'm excited about this.
I know,
This
and
is like it.
I will tell you, Diane, I honestly do not believe that I could help people get as far as they managed to get to without the Enneagram. Because when I work with people, individuals, couples, even organizations where there have been some really ugly, disputes, when I can get people to do their work, and I always say, begin with yourself, start at home, and start at home base. When people begin to do Enneagram work and they begin to understand themselves and why they do the things that they do, your heart kind of cracks wide open. You begin to develop some empathy and compassion first for yourself, because you realize you didn't know what you didn't know. And as Maya Angelou always said, when you know better, you do better. But you cannot do that until you know better. So the options open up. When I talk to people who, let's say, have rejected their children and will not see their grandchildren because their children married across racial lines, there are really no words that you can say to convince them that it should be otherwise. But what happens when that couple begins to do their Enneagram work and they begin to develop some real, honest love for themselves that translates out to love for their children, they will recognize that this is not an either or paradigm. This is a both and. I love my child and I'm going to be in relationship with them. And so the Enneagram allows parents to see, I did the best that I knew how, and my children are choosing a different path, but that's okay. That's really okay. And when the parent can see their adult child or their still child at home's Enneagram type, the choices, the interactions are so much more loving. They are so much more loving. I want to use the example of a parent would say type 4, which is one of our more creative types in the Enneagram sort of archetype. And a parent who is constantly trying to take that type 4 child, who is very creative and wants to be unique and show up in the way that they choose to show up in the world. And that parent is trying to take that child and force them into conformity, as opposed to recognizing that this is something that is taking their little wings and just just not letting them fly. But if you understand that child's need to fly, then the love that you have for yourself and for your child frees you up from the need to be harsh or to push an agenda forward on that child that doesn't really fit. So it allows us to see the uniqueness of every individual in a loving way. And when you
Including
can do that,
ourselves.
including ourselves, I've been married to my husband for 39 years. I'm a Enneagram type 1, he's a 9. We talk all the time about our marriage pre-Enneagram and our marriage post-Enneagram, because there's so much more love and compassion and empathy for one another, because now we understand wiring. We do what we do because that's kind of the way we're put together, and it's okay. There's a compassion, and there's laughter. That's an important thing to bring in there. There's a lot of laughter that comes when you catch yourself doing that thing that you do, and you're like,
You
oh,
didn't even know it.
you didn't even know you were doing it all the time. All of a sudden, but when you do your Enneagram work, which is you discover your type, you understand your core motivation, you see how those behaviors show up in the world, and then you have an experience of those behaviors showing up in the world. It's almost like slapping yourself a little bit. It's like, why am I doing that? And then you're given, I believe, when you really see yourself, God's love and mercy gives you the grace that releases you from that habitual stuff that really doesn't serve you or any of humanity well.
I know as a 6, and I call myself a recovering 6, actually, I can just see how my behaviors have shifted and how I'm just so much happier, more productive, happier with everybody else. It doesn't mean things don't upset me. The Enneagram can't do that, but it does help it shifts the energy. What it has done for me, even though you're going deep, there's such an expansion. I had a situation, and I bet you've done something really very similar. I had a client, and I give the Enneagram to my clients. She was in a very tight family business.
Mm-hmm.
So I offered to come do an Enneagram profile for everybody. And once you all are in these classes and you can just see people's eyes open, like, oh, is that why she's doing that? I thought she just wanted to make me nuts. Nope. She's just an 8. That's just what it is. It's liberating, I think.
It is very liberating. And what's fascinating is when people begin to study the Enneagram, and I really recommend sort of a process where you read something about it,
Yep.
and then you actually find a live teacher and you experience learning it with other people, because there you're going to have an experience of the types. There you're going to be able to interact and do different things that really demonstrate the depth of the Enneagram. And it also allows for you to feel the energy that is coming from every type. And here's something that's very important that people forget. We have all 9 types inside of us, except that one dominates, one leads. And that one type that leads, in some ways you can say it's a type that we overdo. It's the type that we are really acting out our stuff within. But when you learn about all 9 types, you can actually learn to shift your energy in ways where you can meet people where they are. So sometimes when I'm working with people, and if I'm working with you, Diane, as a 6, I know what the 6 energy feels like. And so I will meet your 6 energy from that space of 6 with a lot of love and compassion, because I understand that there are certain things that you may enter with that I can help you better if I understand you, if I understand what you're experiencing. And that's the experience that you get when you interact with other people learning the Enneagram. When you see the panels or you sit on a panel yourself and you recognize, wow, these are my people.
That's exactly what happened to me. I went to my very first Enneagram class, and I do want to tell anybody that's listening and people that are going to see this recording, we're going to talk about Deborah's classes in a minute. I've been to in-person classes. They're wonderful. I've been to online classes. They're wonderful too. When my very first class, Deborah, was in London, I was the only American there. So I said a lot of y'alls because that got me some attention actually. But I got called up to be on a panel. And what a panel means is as you study each specific type, then they invite people who are in that type to come up and just sit and talk about it. There were no other Americans there. The other people on the panel with me were from all over the world. They were men, women, they were Black, white, Asian, everything. And we just started looking at each other because as the instructor was asking us questions, this little 20-year-old from Hong Kong was having the same feelings that I was having. I've never seen any kind of a system that was spot on like that. So I can see why this is a beautiful tool to use for equality and inclusion. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, what happens with the Enneagram when I take it into the world of equality and inclusion, social justice, and anti-racism, uh, what really does happen, and it's incredible to see this, when I work in an organization, I will teach the Enneagram. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to work at the top level with the CEO and all the executives. And I like to work with maybe whatever is the lowest level on their sort of corporate structure, which might be and usually is maintenance. And I will say, I start at the top and the bottom at the same time, and then we meet in the middle.
Oh,
So
wow.
within the organization, I will create discussion circles. And Diane, if you could have the experience of seeing what happens when you say you have a white male CEO and you have a Black female maintenance worker, and the two of them are in the same discussion circle because they're the same type. And they begin to discuss the way that they navigate the world. And they begin to talk about how their experiences are so similar and familiar. And yet at the same time, there is the hierarchy and the racial differences. There's the gender difference that exists there. There's a socioeconomic difference. They can have the discussion that sometimes is so difficult to have because they're both eights, you know, and they're not afraid to tell each other like it is. And they find their common ground in the Enneagram. So words that people might not have been able to hear and hearts that might not have been able to be reached are often reached when people can find that their common ground is their Enneagram type, which means their core motivation is common ground. Their basic fear is common ground. You know, their value, their virtue, their fixation, that's all common ground. You have opened up the conversation in a way where hearts crack open and shift, and they can listen to each other in a whole different way. That is truly work that I can say is blessed by God. You can feel, to me, what I call the Holy Spirit in the room when that's happening. And
That's
it's just
amazing.
amazing. It is. It's truly amazing.
It's the one tool that strips away the filters. It's the one tool that I know of that it doesn't make any difference if you're 75 or 17. It just, to watch people meet in that common place and think that, they would never have anything in common. It is really miraculous. And that's why I think it is spiritual. I think it is love in action.
It is. And what happens with the whole energy of two people who would normally not only not have anything in common and not really be willing to listen to one another is that the love opening that gets created by the Enneagram allows for a discussion that would otherwise not have happened. And every single time it happens, I just feel like a vessel that is being used by God for good. And so it is so powerful and meaningful to me because, Diane, I have to tell you, I did not set out in the world to be a social justice warrior. I started modeling when I was 10 years old. I had this sort of semi-glamorous little career. I always was fascinated by the way people's minds work. So I knew I was going to study psychology and get into that. But something happened along the way, and it was recognizing many of the things that have happened in my life and in my family's life, watching my African-American husband get taken down by the police. He's a retired Army colonel and he's a physician, but that didn't protect him. I have two African-American sons. They've been through the same experience. My daughter is an amazing social justice warrior named Tiffany Jana, and she's got books all over the place that everyone's reading now. But it became my life's work to start looking at how can I bring people together to have these deep conversations and allow these conversations to be imbued with love. How can I make that happen? Because hatred is not going to get us anywhere. Anything that is already negative, if you insert hatred into it, then you're just creating a poisonous, toxic mixture. But when you can come to the table in the true spirit of love and have conversations about, that's when you have the healing. So I use the Enneagram for racial healing with groups of people, and I use it for all of my diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings. I am trying to empower and certify people to be able to do that work because I think we've reached a moment in time where good people are waking up and saying, we need to do something about this. We really do. And we can do something about it together. I have said to many people, in reality, it will not be Black or people of color who end oppression. It will be Black people and people of color who are connected with white people to end oppression. But we have to do it with love. And the Enneagram helps us do that.
It's the one tool that, there are many things that we, and I'm sure everybody watching, have experienced as life-changing.
Yes.
But this is not only life-changing, but you never see life the same way again. You can't.
You really don't.
So I can't believe we're almost at the end here, because obviously I could talk to her forever. So let me ask you two quick questions. First of all, if somebody wants to get started, where would you have them start? And then tell us about the offerings that you have coming up, because I think they're fascinating.
All right. Well, for someone who wants to get started, I would say get a book. And there are so many of them out there. I always say Wisdom of the Enneagram is probably a good place to start if you have a spiritual sort of, inclination towards learning from a spiritual standpoint. And Richard Rohr's books are excellent for that as well. I love also the work of Beatrice Chestnut. And if you are, in any kind of a leadership position, she has 9 types of leadership. And Beatrice does a lot of work with the subtypes, which are fascinating. That's a little bit more of a sort of an upgrade in terms of it takes you a little bit deeper, faster. But if you want to dive into deep water, I recommend Beatrice's work. And then another good way to do it is to look at YouTube clips, but make sure that the YouTube clips are from reputable teachers. That's very important.
So maybe from the Enneagram Institute,
Exactly.
you, Russ.
Yes, because what has happened, because the Enneagram has becoming mainstream, there are a lot of people who are picking up one book and becoming automatic experts. I don't even really call myself an expert. I mean, at the end of the day, you do, and so do many others, because I've been studying it for 20 plus years and teaching it for that long. But the thing that you have to recognize is, because it is a bottomless well, none of us, no matter how hard we have studied, none of us know what we don't know. And it keeps evolving. So I can honestly say to you, every year of my life, I go to another level. So pick a good book, find a good teacher. My website, it's easy to find, deborahEgerton.com. And I have lots of information on there. There's even an Enneagram test that you can take on there that's free. And then enroll in a class. And I think this is a great time, because actually the virtual classes are excellent. They're really,
and you can still do group work.
Yes.
With the technology now. So tell us what you have coming up, because they are fascinating.
So let me see, my first offering will be on September the 2nd. I will be starting a 7-week online class. It is myself and Robert and Holly Holden and Venetia David, and we're doing the Enneagram of Grace. So it is looking at how the Enneagram is something that gives us grace, but if you take the G out of it, you've got race. And so have we taken God out of this whole concept of race? And how do we bring it back? How do we come together to become allies in that space? And that will be for 90 minutes once a week for 7 weeks. On September 29th, I'm kicking off my 6-month diversity, equity, and inclusion certification training. It is primarily for Enneagram practitioners, and it is for people who are really interested in learning how to no longer do what we call the diversity bypass. So if you're working out in the world and you're consulting and you're working with a leadership team, and the leadership team has people of different ages, different ethnicity, different genders, are you working with that as well as working with, just getting that team to be unified? You can't really bypass the differences. So working with the Enneagram helps you to integrate the differences into that teamwork and to learn how to work with what's in the room and to ask the question, who doesn't have a seat at the table and whose voice is missing? So that'll be starting the 29th of September. And then there are many offerings coming after that, but they're all
sign up at your website.
Correct.
Oh, thank you so much for being here today. I am deeply grateful. I love the Enneagram. I could talk about this all day long. I am happy to call you an expert, even if you won't. This is fascinating work. It is absolutely, I understand what she was saying about it being a well, right? Because the work will actually pull you in. It is so powerful. So I want to thank Deborah for being here today. Thank you so much. I encourage you all to explore the Enneagram. We were not able to see them during the broadcast, but we'll check them out afterwards. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you every Wednesday right here on Awake TV. I'm Diane Haworth, and you've been watching How to Choose Love. I'll see you next week.